Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
The key was small enough to disappear inside Zara Tindall's closed hand, yet the decision behind it carried the weight of a royal earthquake. In a private room at Balmoral, with no announcement prepared, and Queen Camilla nowhere in sight, Zara stepped toward Prince William and placed the estate key into his palm. It was not a symbolic courtesy, it was a transfer of trust, and Camilla had never been informed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William stared at the medal without closing his fingers. Zara watched carefully, knowing the silence meant he understood the danger. Balmoral was not another royal residence. It was the family's sanctuary, a home bound to Queen Elizabeth II's final years, customs, and memories carrying more emotional force than any public palace. The ceremonial estate key, the symbol granting authority over family areas, now rested between them, and the future king knew accepting it could look like a challenge to King Charles, while the monarch still reigned. Zara held no royal title, yet few inside the family could question her standing. She had grown up close to Princess Anne, shared a loyal bond with William, and remained protective of the late Queen's belief that duty mattered more than display. Her voice stayed calm as she told her cousin that Balmoral needed someone who understood what it had been built to protect. But grief tightened every word. Elizabeth's death had left wounds neither had named, and this decision carried the pain of promises made before the family was ready to face them. William lifted his eyes. He asked whether his father knew. Zara did not answer at once. No aide had witnessed the exchange, no secretary had recorded it, and Anne, the only other person aware, had remained away. That absence felt planned. It shielded the Princess Royal from appearing to command the transfer while making her approval impossible to deny. A memorandum lay beside them. The Access Memorandum, a record showing who could enter and supervise Balmoral's protected spaces, listed William's office, Anne's authority, and Zara's temporary stewardship. Camilla's name appeared nowhere. Her household had not been delayed, overlooked, or accidentally excluded. It had been cut out of the chain of communication. Footsteps moved beyond the closed door. William turned toward the sound, but Zara leaned closer and warned him that permission was not the threat. The real danger was the person they had prevented from knowing. And as William closed his fingers around the key, the question was no longer whether Balmoral had changed hands, but why Zara believed Camilla could not be trusted with the truth. Behind the transfer stood 4 people carrying 4 very different versions of Balmoral. To William, it was the last place his grandmother's authority still felt alive. To Zara, it was a promise that could not be broken. To Charles, it was an inheritance burdened by grief. But to Camilla, the estate represented something more dangerous. Proof that she had finally been accepted inside the monarchy's most guarded family circle. William remained alone after Zara left, turning the key slowly between his fingers. Balmoral had shaped some of his earliest memories, but those memories were never simple. Summers there had offered freedom under Queen Elizabeth II's steady protection, yet the same walls carried the pain of Diana's unhappiness and the silence surrounding his parents' failing marriage. The future king understood better than most that a royal home could shelter a family while quietly preserving everything that had wounded it. He remembered his final restrained conversation with his grandmother there, when she had spoken about duty without explaining what she feared would happen after her death. Pride rose inside him, but unease quickly followed. Camilla would not see this handover as protection. She would see it as humiliation. Zara carried a different Balmoral inside her. Through Princess Anne and Prince Philip, she had known the estate as the one place where she could simply be a granddaughter rather than someone measured against royal expectations. The Prince Consort, a title used for the reigning queen's husband, had taught her that service did not always require a crown, while her mother had shown her that loyalty often meant acting before others understood why. For several days, she had kept the key hidden after removing it from a locked cabinet connected to an old family stewardship arrangement. meaning a private agreement about who would protect sensitive royal spaces. Her choice had not been sudden. Every hour she carried it had made the burden heavier. Camilla, meanwhile, sat at another royal residence, reviewing plans for the coming Balmoral season. She marked a change to the guest list and confidently approved a private dinner, unaware that control over the rooms she was discussing had already shifted. Charles watched her for a moment before a sealed note from Anne arrived. He recognized his sister's handwriting, placed the envelope beneath another folder, and refused to open it in front of his wife. The Queen Consort noticed. She asked nothing, but her silence sharpened the tension between them. Zara's phone rang before she had moved far from the closed room. Anne asked only, "Did he understand?" Her daughter looked back toward the door and answered, "He understood enough to be afraid of it." Inside, William studied the key again and began to sense that it belonged to something older than the morning's decision, an agreement connecting Elizabeth, the Princess Royal, and Charles, yet somehow excluding the woman now sitting beside the king. To understand why Zara acted without warning, William would have to return to the single moment at Balmoral when Camilla crossed a line the family had never forgotten. The transfer did not begin with a document, a legal dispute, or a sudden argument. It began months earlier, at a private Balmoral dinner, when Camilla made one request too many. The table had been cleared, the aides had withdrawn, and only family remained when she proposed changing access to the late Queen's private rooms. Zara stopped speaking. Anne lowered her glass, and William realized that the evening had just become unforgettable. After Queen Elizabeth II's death, several rooms at Balmoral had remained untouched under an informal family agreement, a private understanding rather than a legal order. Those spaces held personal letters, family photographs, writing equipment, handwritten notes, and possessions never intended for exhibition or public curiosity. Charles had allowed trusted staff to catalog selected items, meaning they could carefully record what remained without changing or removing it, but the king had delayed any permanent decision. He knew the rooms still carried painful meaning for his sister, his niece, and his eldest son. Anne saw them as the final private trace of her mother. Zara remembered the grandmother, who had welcomed her there without ceremony. William felt the weight of every conversation that could never happen again. Camilla broke the silence by proposing that part of the preserved apartment become a controlled hospitality suite for carefully chosen guests. She added that access should fall under her household supervision, meaning her personal staff would decide who entered and how the space was used. Zara's expression hardened. She asked whether the monarch's mother's rooms were now being discussed as available space. The Queen Consort replied that sentiment could not be allowed to block Balmoral's future. Anne pushed her chair back and looked directly at Charles. She told him that protecting memory was not the same as refusing progress. Her calmness cut deeper than anger, yet the king remained silent between his wife and his sister. William then noticed the measured floor plans beside Camilla's papers. Exact dimensions of the restricted corridor had already been marked, even though the family had approved no formal review. Someone inside the estate had quietly supplied her office with information. After dinner, Zara found the Queen alone beside the secured passage. Camilla did not attempt to enter, but she rested one hand against the locked door and said that every room eventually belonged to the reign that followed. Zara carried those words straight to Anne. In a private sitting room, she gave her mother a documented account of the encounter, repeating the sentence exactly. The Princess Royal listened, opened a drawer, and removed an old key linked to a stewardship arrangement created during Elizabeth's final Balmoral summer. She placed it between them and said, "Then we decide who protects the door." From that moment, hesitation ended. Mother and daughter revived the agreement, and William became its chosen guardian. But when Camilla finally learned that the key had been placed in William's hand, the buried tension of that dinner erupted into a confrontation no royal aid could soften. Camilla did not summon a secretary, issue a written objection, or wait for Charles to intervene. She went directly to William. Behind a closed door, with no aides and no prepared language, she demanded to see the key Zara had given him. William refused to place it on the table. What followed was not a polite disagreement over an estate. It was a confrontation over belonging, memory, and who had the right to define the monarchy's future. The Queen had discovered the transfer after her private secretary requested confirmation for Balmoral's next access schedule, and received a cold reply directing every sensitive approval to the prince's office. An access schedule was the formal record controlling who could enter restricted parts of a royal estate and when. One changed instruction had exposed everything. She understood at once that this was not a minor administrative adjustment. Authority had moved, and no one had shown her the courtesy of saying so. William agreed to the private meeting because he wanted to stop competing household complaints from reaching Charles and forcing the king to choose publicly between his wife and son. Yet the moment she entered carrying the rejected access memorandum, restraint began to collapse. Camilla placed the document firmly before him and asked why she had been excluded from a decision involving her husband's home. He answered carefully that the key concerned family stewardship, not royal rank. Stewardship meant responsibility for protecting property and traditions without claiming personal ownership over them. But she heard something far crueler. She told him she had spent decades being reminded of every room, memory, and relationship the family believed she had no right to touch. The future king did not interrupt. His silence made her anger sharper. Then she extended one open hand and said, "Give it back until the king decides." William kept the key inside his jacket, stepped away from the table, and replied, "The king already knew there was a decision to make." Camilla's expression changed. Through a recorded briefing from her household, she revealed that she knew about Elizabeth's preserved rooms, the old family agreement, and Anne's role in reviving it. That knowledge stunned him, because the arrangement had been guarded by only a handful of people. Someone inside Balmoral had been briefing her long before the key changed hands. The prince asked who had spoken. She refused to answer and demanded again that he return what had been taken. William finally looked directly at her and said the key had not been taken from Camilla because it had never been entrusted to her. The words ended the argument more brutally than shouting could have done. The Queen lowered her hand and stood silent, struck not as a monarch, but as a woman who had once again been told that acceptance had limits. Before leaving, she warned him that exercising authority without confronting Charles could damage both father and son. She would force that conversation before the day ended. Yet Camilla's demand could not reverse the transfer, because the true authority behind Zara's decision had been written into a private promise that even Charles was reluctant to break. The key did not derive its power from metal, ceremony, or ownership records. Its authority came from a final safeguard, created by Queen Elizabeth II, when she understood that Balmoral would soon outlive her. She had feared neither Charles nor Camilla by name. Her concern was larger, that grief, ambition, and a changing court might transform a family refuge into another instrument of power. So she entrusted its emotional guardianship to those she believed would remember the difference. During her last extended stay at the estate, Elizabeth held a private recorded conversation with Princess Anne about the future of her personal rooms, family archives, and customs untouched by public royal protocol. Royal protocol meant the official rules controlling public duties, ceremonies, and formal behavior, but these rooms belonged to a more private world. The arrangement transferred no legal ownership. Instead, it created a family stewardship understanding, requiring agreement from Charles, Anne, and the next direct heir before any protected space could be altered. Charles finally opened his sister's sealed note alone. His face tightened as he recognized his mother's careful phrasing, and he placed the page down without speaking. He remembered the original conversation, the one he had hoped grief would make unnecessary. Now every sentence had returned as a command he could neither ignore nor obey without cost. The king felt trapped. Defending Camilla could wound his sister and William, two people already carrying deep pain over Elizabeth's death. Rejecting his wife could reopen every insecurity she had endured while fighting for acceptance inside the family. Anne entered after he had finished reading and refused to let him turn the matter into a campaign against the queen consort. She told her brother that the question was not whether his wife belonged beside him, The question was whether any spouse should control the private memory of the sovereign who came before. Her calm words removed the protection of personal anger and left only duty. The note also explained why Zara had carried the physical key. Elizabeth had chosen a non-working royal, someone without an official schedule or competing palace household, to guard it until the family identified the proper steward. Her granddaughter had not seized authority, she had held it in trust. Then Charles reached the handwritten final line. When uncertainty threatened Balmoral, responsibility should pass to the heir who understood duty without possession. The monarch knew immediately that the phrase described William. His son had inherited the future without yet owning it, carrying obligation before power. Charles closed his eyes, folded the note once, and told Anne, "Then Mother decided this before any of us were ready." She did not celebrate, she simply confirmed that the transfer could not be cancelled without breaking Elizabeth's final safeguard. Yet outside that room, Camilla's household had already begun challenging schedules, permissions, and access. The conflict was moving beyond one locked corridor. With Elizabeth's safeguard now impossible to dismiss, Camilla was forced to confront a new reality. Balmoral would remain open to her as queen, but its deepest authority had passed beyond her reach. The consequences arrived quietly. No proclamation was issued, no title was removed, and no public accusation was made. Instead, schedules changed. Instructions were rerouted. A planned inspection disappeared from Camilla's diary. One by one, the practical privileges she believed were settled began slipping away. The palace called it an adjustment in stewardship. Camilla understood it differently. For the first time since becoming queen, she had encountered a royal door that rank alone could not open. William's office now controlled approval for Elizabeth's preserved rooms, the family archive corridor, selected guest access, and any alterations touching the late monarch's private spaces. The family archive was the protected collection of personal letters, records, photographs, and objects never intended for ordinary public use. Camilla still held her residential place at Balmoral and retained every public honor attached to her position, but her household could no longer arrange entry, commission work, or change those rooms without the prince's written consent. Then the revised briefing folder arrived. She opened it calmly, noticed that several pages had been removed, and slowly closed the binder. After dismissing her secretary, the queen consort remained seated alone while the door shut behind him. Anger came first. Sadness followed. She understood the deeper message hidden beneath the changed paperwork. The family had accepted her crown, her marriage, and her public service, yet some of them still refused to trust her with their memories. Charles entered later and tried to comfort his wife, but he would not overturn the arrangement. Camilla asked whether he truly believed she would dishonor Elizabeth's legacy. The king hesitated before answering, and that pause wounded her more deeply than an accusation. He finally said the decision was about preventing any single household from controlling the past. She heard only that her husband could not defend her without conditions. The humiliation deepened when William formally withdrew her proposed hospitality plan. Preliminary contractor inquiries had already been made without full family approval, including one request to replace the lock on the preserved corridor. Through a documented household briefing, Camilla insisted she had never authorized that detail. Someone serving beneath her had pushed the project beyond her instructions, turning a controversial proposal into what looked like an attempt to seize access. The prince believed her uncertainty was genuine, but the discovery made the restrictions impossible to soften. Soon afterward, William stood before the corridor as its new steward. He inserted Zara's key, opened the door only a few inches, then closed it again. Anne watched without pressing him. He admitted that he was not ready to enter because crossing that threshold would make his grandmother's absence feel final. Later, Zara found him alone and refused to let grief become policy. She told her cousin that protecting Balmoral could not mean building every decision around resisting Camilla. He had to decide what kind of future he intended to protect. That warning shifted the struggle away from locked rooms and royal rank, leading William and Zara into the private conversation that would finally change the meaning of the key. There were no courtiers between them, no constitutional phrases, and no family audience waiting for an answer. Zara found William alone near the protected corridor and asked the question everyone else had avoided. Was he guarding Balmoral because he understood its purpose, or because denying Camilla felt easier than confronting the family's grief? William did not defend himself. For the first time since accepting the key, he admitted that preservation could become another form of fear. Zara told him Elizabeth had never wanted Balmoral turned into a sealed memorial. The late queen believed its private character mattered because it allowed the family to exist beyond ceremony. Yet she also believed every generation had to build new memories rather than live forever inside hers. William understood the warning. If every room became a loyalty test involving Diana, his grandmother, Charles, or the queen consort, the estate would stop being a refuge and become a battlefield. With no aides nearby, the prince admitted that entering Elizabeth's rooms felt like accepting she would never return. His cousin answered with equal honesty. She had delayed handing him the key because giving it away meant surrendering the last duty her grandmother had personally left in her hands. The silence between them softened. Both had mistaken responsibility for a way of keeping grief close. Zara then challenged him to separate Camilla's insensitive dinner proposal from the question of permanent exclusion. The queen had crossed a boundary, but punishing her forever could not become the foundation of royal stewardship, the duty of protecting an inheritance without treating it as personal property. William looked down at the key and finally accepted that defending memory was not the same as using it as a weapon. He placed the medal in Zara's palm and gently closed her fingers around it. He told her he would carry the responsibility only if she remained part of every major decision. She returned it immediately and said shared trust had always been Elizabeth's true intention. Together, they drafted a new family rule through a documented private agreement. The preserved rooms would remain untouched, but other parts of Balmoral could change through consultation involving Charles, Anne, William, and Zara. The future king then made the harder choice. Camilla would be informed directly and treated with respect. She would never control the protected corridor, yet she would not be treated as an intruder across the rest of the estate. William met her privately and explained the boundary without accusation. The queen consort did not apologize for believing Balmoral needed to evolve, but she conceded that Elizabeth's rooms should never have been approached without full family consent. That admission prevented the dispute from tearing father, son, and wife apart. For one brief moment, the key no longer represented rejection. It represented balance. But peace came too late to contain the secret. News of Zara's handover had already escaped the palace, and the story outside was becoming harsher than the truth within. The family had finally found a fragile peace inside Balmoral, but beyond its gates, one image of Zara's key was about to ignite a national argument over memory, power, and the future king. By morning, the private exchange had become a public symbol. Britain was no longer discussing an estate key. It was debating whether William had defended Queen Elizabeth's memory or quietly stripped Camilla of authority. The palace offered careful language, but careful language could not compete with the image now dominating every screen. Zara, walking beside William at Balmoral, while the future king carried a small antique key in his uncovered hand. Conflicting household briefings had carried the story beyond the estate. One account described the transfer as family stewardship, the responsibility to protect royal spaces without personally owning them. Another stressed that the queen had been excluded and encouraged the belief that authority had been taken from her in secret. Broadcasters quickly framed the moment as the clearest sign yet that the prince was beginning to exercise moral power over the monarchy's private future before inheriting the crown. That mattered because Balmoral was not merely land or stone. It remained the place most closely tied to Elizabeth's final days, and whoever controlled its memories could influence how her reign would be remembered. A major newspaper captured the national mood with the headline, "The Key to the Future," above a close image of William's hand. Beneath it, a smaller photograph showed Camilla arriving alone at another engagement, her expression fixed as questions followed her. Outside Buckingham Palace, A crowd gathered around television reporters. An elderly woman held a photograph of the late queen and said the protected rooms should remain a home, not a prize. Her words spread across broadcasts because they expressed what many felt. Acceptance into a royal family did not automatically create ownership over every private wound. Yet Camilla's supporters answered with equal force. They warned that excluding the reigning queen could preserve old hostility forever and turn Elizabeth's memory into a weapon against the woman Charles had chosen. Zara watched the coverage from home with growing distress. Mike Tindall sat beside his wife as she admitted that protecting one person's memory might have publicly wounded another. He reminded her that the handover had not been an attack, but she knew intention could not control the meaning given to it outside Balmoral. The palace finally issued a formal statement confirming William's stewardship role while carefully recognizing Camilla's continuing place in the estate's family life. A palace statement was an authorized public message designed to present one agreed version of a royal event. Even then, the debate did not calm until the queen consort faced the question herself. During a public engagement, a reporter asked whether she felt excluded. She paused, adjusted one glove, and replied, "Balmoral belongs to the family's memories, not to any one of us." The restraint in her answer changed the coverage. William heard it as neither surrender nor accusation, but as an opening. And when the cameras moved on, the family returned to Balmoral for one final decision. One that would transform Zara's secret handover from an act of exclusion into a lasting definition of royal duty. In the end, no one was banished from Balmoral, no marriage was broken, and no royal title changed. Yet the monarchy emerged altered, because a boundary had finally been drawn. Zara's decision forced William to accept responsibility, compelled Charles to honor his mother's wishes, and made Camilla confront the limits of rank. The key did not declare a winner, it revealed something far more important. Royal authority survives only when power learns to protect what it cannot possess. The family gathered privately at Balmoral to formalize the stewardship arrangement and replace the secrecy that had nearly divided them. Stewardship meant guarding important rooms, records, and traditions without claiming them as personal property. Charles confirmed that his son would oversee Elizabeth's preserved rooms and the family archives connected to them, while Anne and Zara would remain permanent advisors on every decision affecting those spaces. Camilla accepted the boundary in person, but she refused to pretend the experience had not hurt. She told Zara that learning through altered schedules had made her feel judged before anyone allowed her to speak. Her husband's niece answered honestly. The secrecy had been intended to protect Elizabeth's rooms, not to deny the queen consort's place beside the king. William then admitted his own failure. Grief had allowed the key to become a symbol of resistance, and resisting Camilla had briefly felt easier than accepting that his grandmother was gone. The prince promised that his stewardship would preserve the late monarch's values without freezing Balmoral in the year of her death. Before anyone left, he placed the key at the center of the table instead of hiding it inside his pocket. Charles covered his son's hand with his own and said responsibility was safest when no one mistook it for ownership. The final decision carried both firmness and mercy. Elizabeth's protected corridor would remain unchanged under William's supervision, and Camilla's hospitality proposal would be permanently abandoned. Yet she would help redesign another part of the estate where future generations could gather and create memories of their own. Zara finally felt the burden lift. She had not surrendered her grandmother's trust. She had delivered it to the person prepared to carry it forward. The future king's authority became stronger, not because he defeated the queen, but because he defended a boundary without destroying a relationship, and accepted correction when grief clouded his judgment. William finally approached the preserved corridor with Zara beside him, as Charles, Anne, and Camilla waited behind. He turned the key without triumph, opened the door, and allowed them to enter together. Zara handed William a key in secrecy, but its final purpose was revealed in the open, not to keep Camilla outside, but to ensure that no single royal would ever again claim Balmoral's memory as their own. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.